Well, here's Martha MacCallum with former Trump National Economic Council head Larry Kudlow, now back on TV, and talking about the danger of when people get a lunch that they don't pay for. Now, I say a lunch they don't pay for because most kids at most meals get a lunch they don't pay for. But here is Martha MacCallum with a special problem with people getting a lunch they don't pay for.
One of the things that kills me is that now that, there's a free lunch program in New Jersey, and it's for everyone, even if you don't need help to send your child's lunch to school. So those kids are all going to grow up thinking, well, lunch is free, right? And then God help the person who comes along and tries to take that away, Larry. You talk about free lunch. I mean, that will never, once that happens, right, once it's baked in there, it's never going to.
But it's important what you said. You're going to pay for it with higher taxes and higher inflation. And I think again, common sense Americans know this is not right. They don't want big government socialism. They don't want a welfare state we're all dependent on.
These people are freaks.
I mean, first off, let's just start with Martha MacCallum. Children get free lunches that they don't pay for all the time. My kids get free lunches. I make them a lunch. They take it. They never pay for it.
But they pay for it emotionally. So,
well, that's true. That's true.
Because every time you give Saul or Mila a sandwich, you go, do you know how much this is costing me? And the sweat off my back and all of the talking that I do, yada, 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 on my show for you to have this turkey sandwich, eat it and weep. That's what you do, right?
That's what and not just for lunch, when I put down food for dinner too, same thing.
And that's usually a little more comprehensive. So you better berate them extra then.
And it seems like MacCallum is worried that there are people who could pay for school lunch, but aren't. But the money that we're talking about is not that significant. The amount of people who are eating lunch that could pay for it and don't, because what it does is it also does not stigmatize the other kids, because this is what they want. They want to pass on this ideology that if you don't have money, you are more like a moral reprobate. There is something wrong with you. And they want this to start early. So the kids get it in elementary school. So they learn this early, that if their parents are not wealthy, then there's something wrong with them morally. Yep. And because we know how dangerous it is for kids not to be shamed because they don't have money, because then they grow up and they don't think it's money. And then they think that like the government could provide them with something like health care just by paying for taxes.
Yeah. I mean, they want to use hunger as a disciplinary tool, and they want that exact message communicated from a really young age. Right. And so say your parents are so morally decrepit that they are unable to provide lunch for you. You better learn that lesson. So when you grow up, you be a good little worker and you contribute to this economy in the way that we want you to. And that's what they want to do. I mean,
there was that Paul Ryan, like a fake story that he used to tell about the kid in school. And, he wanted a brown bag lunch because that meant somebody loved him. And it was a story that he told as if he had met that kid. And it turned out to be a story he stole from a Wisconsin, public official who told that story and was also had made it up. The idea that like you're making somebody feel bad if they get a free lunch at school is just bat crap crazy.
And as if like there aren't already, I'm sure, just social ramifications when you're unable to bring your own lunch to school, right? Like they want it to be, or
you're going to be punished.
You're going to be punished. Yeah, right. They want it to go a step further. So that's Martha MacCallum and with her pro-shaming poor children stance. And more than that, right? Make sure they're hungry too. because the shame isn't enough. So, like, that's how these ghouls work backwards from their sociopathy. They make it into some deep ideological concern, and oh my God, look, society's falling apart. It's a way for them to justify it. That's the only way that they can, and like they create a slippery slope argument based on a set of amazing false premises, because otherwise, then they have to look inward and say, "Oh, actually, we're monsters."
And you're right. They have to start with even something this sort of like sick, because then everything else becomes easier, right? Like you don't want even the sort of the obvious things, like let's feed the kids. You don't want that hanging out there, because then it is a slippery slope. Because if you start saying like, well, kids should not starve and they shouldn't be stigmatized, then people start asking like, well, what about like people in their teens, or what about people who are like in their 20s, or what about just all human beings? And then it's a real problem for them. Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.